Tomorrow, my husband, Carlos, will be coming back home. I needed to check his fishing gear, so I went into the garage. It was so hot that I thought I might faint if I didn't hurry while looking for the fishing equipment. Then it happened. There was a bang, and the garage door slammed shut. I was startled and turned towards the door in the pitch-black garage. I tried pushing the door, but it wouldn't open, probably locked from the outside. Sweat poured down my face as panic set in. Carlos's stepchild, Leah, must have been waiting for me to go into the garage. After all, she never opened up to me and only ever caused trouble. "Hey, what are you doing in there?" Leah said, laughing mockingly at me as I stood there in shock. "Leah, open the door. Stop playing around." She ignored my plea and said, "I'm going out. I'll be back before curfew." "Wait, Leah. Let me out." Leah laughed and left me locked in the garage. It was boiling hot, like being cooked in a pot. I regretted not drinking water before being trapped, but it was too late and I had no drink. What should I do? I left my smartphone outside, so I couldn't call anyone. Sweat was pouring down, draining the water from my body. I couldn't believe she would do something so dangerous. Time dragged on in the scorching heat. The temperature kept rising. I felt sad, thinking that all my efforts to be a good mother had been in vain. Did I make a mistake marrying Carlos? The heat made my head feel faint. If I stayed in the garage any longer, I would collapse from heatstroke. As I was about to lose consciousness, I faintly heard the doorbell ring. Someone was there. I mustered my last bit of strength to pound on the door and shout. It was Carlos's old friend, Mike, a police officer, who had rung the bell. At that moment, Leah, oblivious to everything, came back in high spirits. Her face turned pale as she saw what was happening. 3 years ago, I married Carlos, who had a stepchild. It was a marriage with some uncertainty, but from the outside, we looked like a happy family of 3. Of course, I was eager to get along with Leah, but to her, I was a stranger. Leah adored her father. It's common for girls to have a crush on their dads, especially since they had been living alone together, supporting each other. Their bond was naturally deep. Carlos doted on his daughter and was incredibly indulgent. Sometimes it seemed too much. But I married him because we loved each other, and I believed in our mutual affection. I wanted us to live happily as a family and be accepted by Leah. However, my efforts were in vain, and Leah only caused trouble and never opened up to me. "You're just a stand-in for Mom." Lee's words were like poison, and they hurt. Sometimes, I felt jealous of his affection for his daughter. Why did he marry me? Wasn't his daughter enough? These silly thoughts would torment me. Just as my faith in our bond wavered, Carlos was assigned to work alone. Every day, Lee's words, calling me a substitute, fueled my anxiety. Of course, he loved his previous wife, but that was in the past. Now, he loved me. I kept repeating this mantra to myself. Hoping to bond with Leah, I thought giving her a gift might make her happy. So, I bought a blouse from her favorite brand that Carlos mentioned. It was a cute blouse that I thought would suit her, but she threw it in the trash right in front of me. Heartbroken, I turned to Carlos, but he brushed it off, doting on his daughter. "Leah has strong preferences, she just didn't like it." He didn't see it as harassment. Leah acted sweet around Carlos, hiding her behavior towards me. He couldn't believe good Leah would do such things. I realized I couldn't rely on him. I had to handle this myself. I'm an adult, and I need to correct a child's bad behavior. Resolute, I decided to confront Leah. She continued to spew venom at me, fueling my anxiety about Carlos's absence. Still, I managed to keep myself composed, responding with a smile. I had decided to only scold her if she did something truly wrong. However, my attitude only emboldened her. Complaining about the food or leaving the lunch I made early in the morning untouched was still manageable. But then there were filthy socks, so dirty I wondered where she found them, and trash scattered all over the room. It was like dealing with a mischievous child. I was constantly cleaning up, every day felt like a battle. But this wasn't something to scold her for. She was just acting out because she missed her father, or so I told myself. My solace was the phone calls from Carlos at night and the music box we had chosen together on our honeymoon. Its beautiful melody and the memories of our honeymoon helped soothe my weary heart. Leah must have known how much I treasured it. And she probably resented the frequent calls from Carlos to me. One day, the music box was gone. I found it outside, smashed to pieces on the road. My heart shattered just like that music box. I had always tried to endure her antics, but this time I couldn't hold back. I went into the house, straight to Lee's room, and for the first time, I unleashed my anger. Always smiling, never reacting to her harassment, I was now furious, my eyes blazing. Leah was clearly shocked. Maybe she realized she had gone too far. After that, she was quieter. She would leave whenever she saw me. Since Carlos had been away, we hadn't had dinner together. Leah didn't like my dinners and had always been able to cook for herself. She would prepare her own meals. Though our lives were now more separate, I found peace in the quiet. I sighed as I looked at the box containing the broken music box. This couldn't go on. Had I made a mistake by getting angry? I didn't know what to do, and time passed with my mind clouded. I didn't want to face her either, so our lives continued to diverge. The relentless heat wave made the air conditioner run at full blast every day. I thought I'd finish my shopping early in the morning and return home. Even in the morning, it wasn't cool. I came back drenched in sweat and quickly put away the groceries. Tomorrow, Carlos would be home. I needed to check his fishing gear, so I went into the garage. It was so hot that I thought I might faint if I didn't hurry while looking for the fishing equipment. Then it happened. There was a bang, and the garage door slammed shut. I was startled and turned towards the door in the pitch-black garage. Had the wind closed the door? I tried pushing it, but it wouldn't open. It was locked from the outside. Sweat poured down my face as panic set in. Leah might have been waiting for me to go into the garage. She probably thought she could get back at me by trapping me in there. And she followed me and locked the door. I stood there, stunned and dismayed. "Hey, what are you doing in there?" I heard Lee's mocking voice. "Leah, open the door. Stop messing around." Leah ignored my words and said, "I'm going out. I'll be back before curfew." "Wait, Leah. Let me out." Leah laughed and left me locked in the garage. It was boiling hot, like being cooked in a pot. Especially since I had just returned from shopping. I had been sweating and wanting a drink, but I thought I'd take care of this first and then relax. I regretted not having a drink first, but it was too late and I had no drink. What should I do? I had left my smartphone outside and couldn't call anyone. Sweat was pouring down, draining the water from my body. I couldn't believe she would do something so dangerous. I hoped she would come back soon, but there was no sign of that. Time dragged on in the scorching heat. The temperature kept rising. Did she really hate me that much? Enough to endanger my life? To the point of endangering my life. I felt a deep sadness, wondering if everything I had done was meaningless. Did I make a mistake marrying Carlos if it meant having to live in such discord? The heat was making my head feel faint. If I stayed in the garage any longer, I would pass out from heat stroke. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, I faintly heard the doorbell ring. Someone is here. I mustered the last of my strength to pound on the door and shout. The person who rang the doorbell was Mike, Carlos's old friend and a police officer. Carlos and Mike often went fishing together. Mike had gotten the date wrong for Carlos's return, so he had come to pick up him for another fishing trip. When he got no response to the doorbell, he assumed Carlos was preparing the gear and decided to check. Mike, knowing where the fishing equipment was stored and where the garage was, went straight to it. Luckily, Carlos's favorite fishing gear was in the garage where I was trapped. Mike, hearing my desperate cries for help, rushed to unlock and open the door. As the door opened, I collapsed on the spot. "Francine! Hold on!" Mike said, rescuing me and giving first aid before calling Carlos to come home. He took me to the hospital, where I received 4 fluids for severe dehydration. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. A little later and I might have died. Realizing how close I had come to death, I felt a renewed sense of pity for Leah. How could Carlos's child do something so foolish? When I returned home from the hospital, Carlos came back in a hurry. Mike told Carlos about what Leah had done, and Carlos was shocked. He finally listened to the various harassments I had endured from Leah. Carlos had only ever seen Leah as a sweet and good child. Learning that she had done such terrible things felt like a blow to the head, he said. He looked pained, realizing he had believed Lee's words and caused me so much suffering. "I never thought of you as a replacement for my late wife. I didn't know Leah was saying such things to you." He understood the loneliness and strain I had felt trying to endure it all alone. He had heard from Leah that she didn't like my gift. But he didn't know she had thrown it in the trash. He had noticed my tired voice on the phone but didn't think much of it. "I'm so sorry, I didn't understand you better," Carlos said, apologizing with his shoulders slumped. He told me sincerely that I was his irreplaceable wife, not a substitute. As I took in his words, the feelings that had clouded my heart began to clear. I was glad I had kept faith. Mike, who had been watching our exchange with a smile, suddenly folded his arms with a serious look. Lee's actions could be considered a crime. It might be difficult to overlook this. Mike was an active police officer. We had explained everything at the hospital, and covering it up would be difficult. Meanwhile, she was completely absorbed in having fun, having forgotten about locking me in the garage. She finally noticed just before coming home. She hadn't realized the severity of today's heat because she had been in air-conditioned places. She probably thought I would be mad at her for a while but didn't expect it to be this serious. She apparently thought it wasn't her fault for making things awkward by angering me. She thought it was strange for me to get so angry over something like that. Unaware of everything, Leah came home in a good mood. The moment she opened the door, she froze. Carlos, who wasn't supposed to be there, was glaring at her with an expression she had never seen before. In that brief moment, she must have processed a lot. She had never seen her dad look at her with such a terrifying expression. Leah looked at each of our faces, trying to understand what had happened. Seeing Mike, the police officer, her face turned pale. Her face showed she realized she had done something terribly wrong. Mike began speaking in a calm voice. He explained how many cases there are of children dying when left in cars on extremely hot days, and that metal garages can reach similar temperatures. He explained that what she did today amounted to attempted murder. Leah listened solemnly as Mike spoke. When he asked if she intended to become a murderer, she turned pale and shook her head. I felt a slight relief, realizing that Leah hadn't thought that far ahead. She was still a child with immature thoughts. However, his anger did not subside. If I had lost my life, it would have been an irreversible mistake. Carlos decided to make Leah live on her own. He provided only minimal support, forcing her to live with basic necessities. Leah, who had lived a life of luxury, buying what she wanted and playing as she pleased, now had to struggle to even eat. About a month later, I heard from one of Lee's friends. She initially resented Carlos and me, wondering why things had turned out this way. I never intended to commit attempted murder. I just wanted to teach her a lesson. She reportedly cried a lot at first, saying this. And she said she was glad I was okay, realizing that if I had died, it would have been irreparable. In the end, she seemed to be busy every day with studying and part-time work. After tiring herself out at work, she returned to a room with no food. Remembering how she had thrown away the lunches and dinners I made for her, she thought it was payback. Returning to a dark, empty room and enduring hunger, she realized for the first time what it was like to be truly hungry. She had never really experienced true hunger before. She didn't realize how painful it could be. The room occasionally got cool breezes from the open window. But bugs also came in, so she couldn't leave it open. The fan blew warm air, making the heat unbearable. She realized how difficult it was to endure the heat in a room without air conditioning. Leah reflected deeply on how terrible it was to lock me in the garage on such a hot day. I was surprised to hear she said such things. Being abandoned by the father who doted on her must have been a huge shock. She had been spoiled and given plenty of allowance. She had looked down on kids who had to work part-time jobs. Her first job was rough, and she was constantly scolded by others. Leah, raised as a pampered princess, was seen as a useless worker. Despite her frustration, she had to work to afford food. She endured it because she couldn't bear the thought of going truly hungry. She must have been gritting her teeth and working hard. Carlos's long business trip finally ended, and our life together as a couple began. Carlos, reflecting on everything, listened to me and took my concerns seriously. Thanks to that, we communicated well and felt a deeper bond. We lived happily together, almost like newlyweds. He sometimes went fishing with Mike and brought back fish. As a result, I learned many new fish recipes. It might seem like we were a perfectly fine couple, but that wasn't the case. There was an unhealable wound between us. It was about Leah, whom we had driven out of the house. Carlos, out of consideration for me, never brought up her, but I knew he sometimes looked troubled. As a parent, he couldn't help but be concerned about his daughter. He must have been worried. I wish he would just go see her. It wouldn't bother me at all. Sure, I nearly died back then, but I know Leah didn't mean for it to go that far. She was still a child, and it was just a prank. Her harassment was like a mischievous child's pranks. Though I remained silent, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Now that she seemed to have grown up and reflected on her actions, I thought it was time for a change. Carlos had never been so angry with his daughter before. After taking such a hard stance, he found it difficult to back down now. He insisted he didn't regret it. At that time, it was necessary. Carlos himself seemed to think it was about time, but he felt stuck. Watching him, I couldn't help but worry about Leah, who had been thrown out. I occasionally sent her care packages. Eventually, I started receiving thank you emails from Leah. When I let out a surprised shout at the unexpected email, Carlos looked at me curiously. I was so happy that I showed Carlos the email. "Has she grown up a bit?" he asked with a pleased smile. For Carlos, pushing away the daughter he doted on must have been tough. I felt the same. I never wanted to be at odds with Leah. I wanted the three of us to live happily together as a family. Even though such a thing happened, I sometimes regretted thinking that I could have handled it better. it wasn't just Lee's fault. After that, I enthusiastically sent care packages and frequently exchanged emails with her. One day, I received a long email from Leah. In it, she apologized for all the harassment she had caused, including the garage incident. I was so happy that she finally understood. Tears welled up in my eyes. The feeling that I wanted to get along with her had reached her. I showed it to Carlos, and we both shed tears. There had been tough days, but Leah was truly growing up. I was glad we had come this far. I wanted to reward myself, Carlos, who endured the pain of pushing Leah away, and Leah, who overcame it. After that, we frequently visited each other, and the three of us were able to have meals together. When I excitedly talked about baking sweets with her next time, Carlos showed a genuinely relieved smile. Prioritize me over your mom. Come to the family gathering now. My husband, Kevin's angry voice echoed well in the silent funeral home. Everyone looked at me as if they were shocked. Please, Kevin. Just let me say my final goodbye to my mom. No. Hurry up and come. If you don't arrive within an hour, I'm filing for divorce. Divorce was something I'd actually been wanting to ask for. But I didn't want to add to my dad's worries, especially since he was already grieving the loss of his wife. Got it? You have 1 hour. Wait a second. The call ended. As I was wondering what to do, I was approached. What was that about? Dad asked, his body trembling. Have you always been treated like that? Well, yes. Dad has always been bossy to Mom. My daughter Olivia said that to him instead. Hearing this, my dad's expression turned from anger to a stern seriousness. Is that so? Then, let's do as he wishes, he said with a cold voice. My name is Sophia. I'm a 48-year-old housewife. Currently, I live with my husband Kevin. We met during our student days. Hey, I like you, Sophia. Will you go out with me? He confessed to me when we were high school classmates, and we started dating. We continued dating through college and decided to get married when we became working adults. I'll treasure you forever. So, please, become my wife. That was his proposal. Subsequently, at his behest, I chose not to seek employment and instead become a homemaker. Fortunately, I enjoy all aspects of household chores and don't have any particular hobbies, so I don't spend much money. Kevin always seemed satisfied with me. Sophia, you really are the ideal wife. Being told that was more than enough for my happiness. Not long after, I became pregnant with Olivia. Kevin, of course, as well as my parents and in-laws, were overjoyed. Mom, I'll help you too. Olivia grew up to be a kind child, always following me around, trying to help. Her kindness gradually extended beyond just me, to others outside our home. If she saw someone struggling, she would proactively offer her help. She seemed to have a strong sense of justice, directly confronting bullies and often coming home covered in mud. You really were a tomboy, weren't you? I kind of remember that. Sorry for the trouble I caused back then. My pride and joy, Olivia, grew up and moved out when she got married. Since then, it's been just Kevin and me living together. Today, as usual, while I was cleaning, the doorbell rang. Again? Looking at the monitor, there was Madison, my MIL, just as I expected. I sighed as I opened the door. How long does it take you to open a door? You're so slow. As soon as it opened, she entered, complaining, and demanded coffee as she turned on the TV in the living room. I sighed again at her behavior. I've always been troubled by these sudden visits from Madison. You're still terrible at cleaning and laundry. You're such a useless wife. She always complains about my housework. A long-standing issue. Madison adores Kevin and sees me, his wife, as an adversary. Hence her harassment. Because you can only give birth to a girl, it might be expected. It seems she is also displeased that I only gave birth to Olivia. As if inheriting the family name and estate were all that mattered. It's a real shame not having a male heir. She blames me for not having a son. I suffer from secondary infertility. No matter how hard we tried, I couldn't conceive another child. Madison complains about this too. I always listened to her snide remarks in silence. I used to argue back, but... Shut your mouth! A wife should listen to your MIL without talking back. I've been yelled at and had things thrown at me, so I've learned to just tune her out. I really don't want to let her in. But if I don't, she'll keep ringing the doorbell and start shouting, causing a scene. So, feeling sorry for the neighbors, I end up letting her in. You are Kevin's wife. What we say goes. After saying so, she would stay for hours before leaving. Relieved that she finally left. I caught the eye of a neighbor peeking from their door. That was your MIL, right? Are you okay? Oh, yes. I'm fine. Sorry for the noise. The neighbor reassured me. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Kind neighbors sometimes listen to my complaints, and sometimes visit on purpose when Madison is around, helping me out. Since Madison cares about appearances, she refrains from harassing me when there are other people, like the neighbors, around. Let us know if you need anything. Your grandfather was very good to us. This house is built on land owned by my grandfather, with the deed in my dad's name. Kevin has been warned. If you make spare keys without permission, I'll kick you out. So, the in-laws don't have a spare key. Thanks to my neighbors and my parents, I managed to keep some peace of mind. I really wish Kevin would take my side, though. Here she comes again. So what? I wish she'd tell us before coming, and every time she does, she complains about my housekeeping. Can you please talk to her about stopping that? Kevin made a face of displeasure at my words. And? Not this again. I thought to myself. Why? Isn't Mom doing all this for you? It's your lack of effort that's the problem. You two can't get along because you don't try hard enough. Get used to it already. He never takes my side. Having been spoiled by his mom, Kevin holds antiquated views in the worst way. The husband and his family always come first. He firmly believes in not doing any housework or childcare himself, adhering to a patriarchal mindset. Anyway, it's all your fault. Don't drag me into this MIL and DIL conflict. With that, he wouldn't even listen to me properly. Watching Kevin storm back into the room, I sighed again. It's been a while, Mom. Can I come over soon? One day, Olivia contacted me. To her words, of course. I agreed. The next day, she came over. Why did you come on a weekday? Dad's not here, you know? I don't need Dad. I came to see you, Mom. Olivia isn't very fond of Kevin. Conversely, Kevin adores Olivia, but she always seems annoyed by it. After all, you were the one who always looked out for me, Mom. Plus, I can't like people who bully my favorite person. Saying so, she has always cared for me. So, what brings you here today? Mom, have you thought about divorcing him? I was taken aback by Olivia's question. Seeing my reaction, she gave a wry smile and started to speak. You're not saying anything because you don't want to trouble Grandpa and Grandma, right? Indeed, that was part of it. At first, I considered discussing it with my parents. But my mom has a chronic illness and has been in and out of the hospital for years. That made me hesitant to bring it up. Now that both my husband and I are earning, we can support you, Mom. So, let's live together after you divorce Dad. Hearing this, I was torn. Indeed, dealing with Madison, who enjoys making trouble, and Raphael Robert, who does nothing about it. And Kevin, who no longer offers help or love. I wanted to be free from them. That's what I thought. Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden. It's totally fine. Let's live together, she said with a smile. Her words made me feel saved. However, I couldn't divorce immediately. I needed to prepare and find the right time. But then, our plans were suddenly disrupted. Mom's in the hospital? My mom had to be hospitalized again. This time, it seemed serious. Hearing Dad's exhausted voice, I pleaded with Kevin to let me visit my parents. But, no way. If you go back home, who's going to do the housework here? But it might be really serious this time. No. You're my wife now, so cut ties with your parents. Kevin was adamantly against me visiting my parents. Since getting married, I've only been able to visit my parents' house once a year. And that's only because Olivia begs to visit my side of the family. As I was wondering what to do, I got a call from Olivia. Grandpa told me about Grandma. I see. But, got it. Hand the phone to Dad. It seems Olivia understood everything without me having to explain. I obediently passed the mobile phone to Kevin. Initially skeptical, Kevin's expression brightened when he realized it was Olivia on the line. It's Olivia asking. Fine, I'll let you go. After a brief talk with her, he reluctantly gave his permission. Then, I quickly prepared myself and left for my long-awaited visit home in Olivia's car. Really, Dad can be so irritating, Olivia said angrily as she drove. Despite my smile, I was deeply worried about my parents. Mom, it might be hard to think about now, but you should really consider what's next. I nodded at her words. Even if Grandma was in danger, living with Kevin, who only cared about himself, was no longer an option. I became more resolute about divorcing. Upon arriving at the hospital, I found Mom unconscious and Dad looking utterly depleted. Sophia and Olivia came. Dad. I knew this day would come eventually. Dad, always gentle and caring towards me, appeared so frail that I regretted not coming sooner. I'll stay here for a while. I'll be with him. I've taken some leave from work, so I'll do whatever I can to help. Thank you, both of you. After that, we spent our days caring for Mom and supporting Dad. Caring meant just speaking to her as she was unconscious. So, my role was primarily to support him. Then, as things became critical, when are you coming back home? A message from Kevin. Checking the notifications, there were other messages too. Apparently, Madison had been doing the housework in my absence. Among them was a message. Come back soon. There's a family gathering. Reading this. Mom is critically ill, so I can't come. I replied. Then, Kevin called. Stop messing around. Not only are you neglecting your duties as a wife, but now you're also refusing to attend a family gathering? I'm not joking. What gathering are we talking about anyway? Apparently, one of the relatives is getting married. It seems to be a celebration for that. But the name was unfamiliar to me. I couldn't leave my parents for someone I hadn't even met. It's impossible. I want to be with my parents. No. This is an order. With that, Kevin hung up. I sighed deeply. Mom. Grandma has. Just then, Olivia rushed in. That day, my mom passed away. Soon after, arrangements for her funeral began. Despite her chronic illness, Mom was kind and knowledgeable. She was loved by many, evidenced by not just relatives but various people who came to pay their respects. Dad didn't come. He didn't. I had informed Kevin about the funeral. But he didn't show up. As the funeral proceeded solemnly, my mobile phone rang with a call from Kevin. I should have left the room. But seeing it was him calling, I hesitated. Olivia, thinking something. Just answer it on speaker, she said. Hearing this, I could somewhat guess Olivia's thoughts. She must have planned to expose his wrongdoings to everyone right there. So, I deliberately put the phone on speaker and answered. I'm at a funeral right now. What are you doing? All the other relatives are gathered. His yelling silenced me momentarily. The attendees looked at me, wondering what was happening, but when I signaled for silence, the room quieted down. There's a family gathering today. Come here right now and help my mom. It's impossible. It's my mom's funeral now. You must prioritize me over your mom. Come to the family gathering now. His angry voice resonated in the silent funeral hall. Everyone's faces showed barely concealed irritation at his remarks. Please, Kevin. Just let me say my final goodbye to my mom. No. Hurry up and come. If you don't arrive within an hour, I'm filing for divorce. I had wanted to initiate the divorce myself. But I didn't want to add to my dad's worries, especially since he was already grieving. Got it? You have 1 hour. Wait a second. The call ended. As I was pondering what to do. What was that? Dad approached. His body was trembling. Have you always been treated like that? Well, yes. Dad has always been bossy to Mom. Olivia spoke for me. My dad's expression turned from anger to stern seriousness. Is that so? Then, let's do as he wishes, he said with a cold voice. An hour later, dressed in mourning attire, my relatives and I visited the in-laws' house. When I rang the doorbell, "You're late." Huh? Madison appeared, angry. But seeing all of us together, she stiffened. Ignoring her, we stepped into the in-laws' house. Moving towards the noise, we saw men laughing crudely, possibly drinking. The women, upon seeing us, were surprised and silently made way. We've arrived. Late. What? Kevin stopped mid-sentence as he turned to see us, his expression mirroring Madison's. As the group in mourning attire entered, the lively atmosphere among the relatives shifted to surprise. What's with that outfit? And why are Sophia's dad here? You told me to come right away, even though I was in the middle of my mom's funeral. So, we came specially. It seems we had to prioritize you over my wife, so here we are. We said this to Kevin with a smile. But no one's eyes were smiling. Realizing this, Kevin stammered. And? That is. Avoiding eye contact. Could you please explain why you called Sophia away? What right did you have to take her away from the precious time of saying her final goodbyes to her dear mother? Dad was smiling, but the pressure was immense. To that, Kevin replied, Well, she is my wife? So being your wife means she has to endure everything? Taking care of household and children alone, tolerating harassment from your mom, and being forbidden to return to her parental home. Is that what you call a wife? Kevin tried to argue, but my dad quickly countered, silencing him. Then, "What do you think you're treating my precious daughter as?" my dad yelled at Kevin, who was visibly startled and froze. "Stop it. He is scared," Madison intervened, glaring at Dad, who met her gaze coldly. "A wife obeying her husband is natural, isn't it? In which era are you living? Human rights are defined by law, and your statement denies those laws. Are you aware of that?" Dad quickly rebuked her words, clearly furious about the situation. Seeing him so angry was somewhat satisfying for me, though I didn't show it and kept glaring at Kevin. "If that's the case, I shouldn't be allowed to come home either." Olivia then stood beside my dad and said that, "You sometimes tell me to come home, but tell her she can't return to her own house? That is, you should have been at Grandma's funeral. Instead, you're here drinking. I've always disliked that about you." Kevin looked shocked by Olivia's words, clearly not expecting to be disliked by her. Triggered by this. "Unbelievable! Worst person ever," my relatives said. And about half of Kevin's relatives also began to look at the in-laws disdainfully. "What? Olivia dislikes me." "Kevin, get a hold of yourself." But he seemed too panicked to respond. Seeing their panic, we left the in-laws' house. After seeing my mom off peacefully, I returned to that house one more time to pack up my things. "Are you sure you want to stay with me?" "Of course." I decided to divorce Kevin and return to my parental home. And I plan to live quietly with my dad. "Sophia!" As I was finishing packing up, Kevin barged in, with Madison right behind him. It seems Robert, my Fael, was nowhere to be found. He always seems to flee from these situations. Just in time. "Sign this." I handed Kevin the completed divorce papers. Seeing them, Kevin turned pale and apologized profusely. "I need you, Sophia. Please, reconsider." "I refuse. I no longer have any love for you." "Sophia, I'll forgive what happened before. So you should forgive him too." Something in me snapped at her words. "Who's forgiving whom, you said?" "What? There's nothing I need to be forgiven for." She flinched as I suddenly raised my voice. Ignoring her, I vented all the frustrations I had been holding back. The unannounced visits I detested. The constant complaints about housekeeping. And how I was always treated as a housekeeper at the in-laws' house without a moment to rest. I vented my accumulated frustrations to them. And why should I be the one to ask for forgiveness? Rather, shouldn't you be asking for forgiveness? For intruding and staying for hours on end, complaining about everything, and treating me like a housekeeper. Madison fell silent, perhaps intimidated by my dad's glare beside me. "Kevin, I can't leave my precious daughter in your care. Get out of this house." "What? This house is in my name. You're the one who should leave." He turned pale as if he had forgotten that fact. And then Dad said, "Get out, now." And he drove Kevin and his company away. "Wait. Sophia, reconsider, please." "Wait a second. Before you go, just sign the divorce papers." When I stopped him, Kevin looked happy. But his mood quickly dropped with the words that followed. Finally resigning, he signed the divorce papers. "I'm glad we could divorce without issue." Yes, indeed. As my dad and I shared a laugh, the outside became noisy. We looked outside to see what was happening. Why did Dad leave us here? Apparently, Kevin and Madison had arrived in a car driven by Robert. who left while they were arguing with us. After some commotion, the police, called by a neighbor, took them away. They never stop causing trouble, I muttered, watching the scene unfold. Then, taking advantage of the quiet, I took my things and returned to my parental home. Ah, a message from Robert. Upon returning home, I saw a message from Robert on my mobile phone. He expressed his regret for not being able to protect me, and explained that his early departure was actually a strategic move to give the women in Kevin's family time to escape. It seems that the women were still at the in-laws' house under the guise of tidying up. It seems our intrusion woke the women up, so they all escaped while Robert was buying time. Robert had remained silent inside the in-laws' house, seemingly part of Madison's scheming, and everyone had been ignoring him. This time, he got his revenge. I might have misunderstood him. No, his failure to protect Sophia is a fact. Don't feel sorry for him. Instead, let's be happy we've cut ties with that house. I agreed with his perspective. Kevin and Madison are now in trouble, facing resentment from the spouses of the women who managed to escape. And Robert has divorced Madison as well. After being criticized by everyone, the two were kicked out of the in-laws' house and moved to a cheap apartment. It's going to be tough from now on. Did you do something to Dad? I significantly reduced his savings through the distribution of property and compensation for verbal abuse. Moreover, I informed Kevin's co-workers about the situation. He used to invite people from work over occasionally. Kevin, being conservatively old-fashioned in the worst way, sometimes forced his colleagues to come home. One of them gave me their contact details, saying to reach out if I ever needed help, which I did this time. As a result, his situation worsened. And that's not all. What? Tell me. Kevin had also been verbally abusive toward me in front of his coworkers. Upon learning of our divorce, they presented evidence they had been gathering and sued him. Wow, that's really low. Yes. And on top of that, he was fired and had to pay compensation to his coworkers. That's why Kevin had to move to a cheap apartment, and is now struggling to get by with part-time jobs. I think she should work, but she's been a housewife forever and is living off Kevin's earnings. This situation is causing him significant stress. According to a coworker who spotted him in town, Kevin looked emaciated and irritable, kicking a trash can and being sternly warned by a passing police officer. He's hit rock bottom. It's good we cut ties before our child was born. The reason Olivia was at her parents' house was to announce her pregnancy. Seeing Olivia affectionately stroke her belly, I felt relieved that I had divorced in time. Olivia's husband was also there, currently keeping my dad's company. Would it be all right if I give birth here? Of course. I'm eagerly looking forward to the birth of my grandchild. Dad, excited about the arrival of his great-grandchild, brought out drinks to celebrate with Olivia's husband. However, it looks like I'll need to intervene soon before he drinks too much. Kevin and his selfish actions meant that he would never get to hold his grandchild, let alone see them. This, I thought, would be the greatest punishment for Kevin, who doted on Olivia. I've informed Robert about Olivia's pregnancy, but I don't deserve to meet her. Please focus on caring for Olivia without worrying about me. So, it seems unlikely that they'll meet. By the way, have you thought about remarrying? Not right now. It's too soon after the divorce. While talking to Olivia, I thought of a man named Joseph, the coworker who had given me his contact details and started reaching out more frequently after my divorce. That look on your face, is there someone special? Olivia laughed as she said this, and I ended up telling her everything. I think I know Joseph. What? He was always so apologetic when he woke me up in the middle of the night. Olivia remembered him fondly. It turns out he had always been considerate towards Olivia as a child, and had always watched over me. I always wished he could have been my dad. Is that so? You should grab your own happiness this time. Nodding thoughtfully at her words, I received an invitation to dinner from him and laughed together with Olivia. My own happiness. Maybe this time I can truly find it. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. I've arrived a bit early, haven't I? A year later. I arrived early for our meeting and was wondering how to pass the time when I heard, "Sophia!" Turning around, I saw an emaciated Kevin approaching with an unsteady gait. A lot has happened since then. I've realized how important you are to me. So, I responded coldly while keeping a distance from Kevin. I heard Olivia had a baby. Surprised at how he found out. I knew she was now busily raising her child. The last thing I wanted was for this man to interfere. What does it matter to you? It does. If you and I could start over. That's out of the question. At that moment, someone wrapped an arm around my shoulder. Turning to look, I saw Joseph glaring at Kevin. Are you Joseph? My colleague. Now, I'm no longer your colleague but someone who is seriously dating Sophia. Hearing this, his face fell with despair. A year ago, I had accepted an invitation to dinner from him. And during that time, he confessed he had been harboring feelings for me for a long time. We decided to start dating. So, Sophia will be happy with me this time. Olivia's child will be cherished as my grandchild. You have no place here anymore. With those firm words from Joseph, Kevin left. I doubt he will ever appear before me again. So, Sophia. Yes? Would you marry me? Joseph asked shyly. Blushing, I nodded in agreement. And that's how I got engaged to him. Congratulations! That's wonderful. It's my and your mother's wish for you to be happy. Upon returning home to report, Dad and Olivia congratulated me. I thanked them, slightly embarrassed. Are you having a wedding? No. We're both too old for that now. Plus, Olivia wouldn't be able to attend with her child, and it would be hard for you, Dad? Disappointed by my words, both showed sad faces. But I smiled softly. Instead, we're planning to travel. The house will be left empty. That's fine. Leave Grandpa to me. Then, I guess I'll take care of my great-grandchild. Encouraged by their supportive words, I smiled and looked at both Olivia and Dad. Thanks to you both pushing me, I am very happy now. Thank you. The two exchanged glances. And my dad spoke first. It's me who should thank you. Having you made me and your mother happy. And me too. Because of Mom's loving upbringing, I am who I am today. I thanked them again. And soon, I remarried Joseph. Having you as my wife feels like a dream. Joseph's expression when he said this reminded me of when Kevin confessed his love to me. However, Joseph's was different. Unlike Kevin, who never looked straight at me, Joseph looked directly into my eyes. Even such small things made me smile. Years later, Dad had passed away, joining Mom. Now, Joseph and I live a peaceful life. A stark contrast to my time with Kevin. We discuss everything and respect each other, which I cherish deeply. Olivia and her family are coming today, right? Yes, the grandchild is already 6. Time flies. I want to buy everything for that child when they call me Grandpa. I couldn't help but laugh at Joseph's words. I understand his feelings very well. After all, I feel the same way. Just don't spoil them too much, or Olivia will scold us. That goes for you too, Sophia. As we were laughing together, lively voices came from the entrance. We smiled and headed towards them. Mom, Dad, we're home. Olivia smiled warmly. And the 6-year-old grandchild leaped into Joseph's arms, making him stagger. Such a tomboy. That's your child, after all. Olivia huffed at my comment. And as I burst into laughter, everyone else joined in. I deeply wished to protect these smiles forever.